The night, the chilling stare, a vicious grin, and an unbridled lust for blood. Each of us must have heard fascinating stories about the dark and frightening world of vampires. In these stories, mysterious people in black, long-hooded cloaks with pale faces, crooked fingers, and bloodied fangs hide in their palaces. They are terribly afraid of garlic and sunlight. They attack people and drink their blood. Vampire legends have terrified people for many years. Children told each other scary stories about these mysterious people. Writers wrote novels that became incredibly popular. For example, many people read Bram Stoker's Gothic novel Dracula. Modern culture has given a new meaning to the vampire image. In the Hollywood film Interview with the Vampire, real-life sex symbols Brad Pitt, Tom Cruise, and Antonio Banderas starred. To say nothing of the sensational Twilight, an intriguing pallor, a mysterious glint in the sad eyes, an enigmatic appearance, such as the charming hero of the Twilight vampire saga performed by Robert Pattinson, an actor with whom thousands of modern girls are in love. In Hollywood, they even shot several cartoons about vampires for children. The famous Addams Family are sure real vampires. So that's what bloodsuckers are supposed to be. And in the past, vampires and ghouls seemed much less attractive to people. All this, of course, is legend and fiction. Maybe there be some truth in these legends. Let's find out. Let's take the images of the heroes of vampire stories and look at them scientifically. Medicine tells us that in all descriptions of the appearance of vampires, some common features are clearly traced, which may be symptoms of the disease. Pale, troubled skin, red, sore teeth, allergies to garlic and sunlight, some strange addiction to blood. All these symptoms clearly point to a terrible genetic disease known as porphyria, or more simply, vampirism. It turns out that the vampire myth didn't come out of nowhere. It had some basis in fact. Only the depiction of seriously ill people as monsters was based on the fear of a terrible unknown disease for which there was no cure. In the old days, people found diseases as something terrifying. Mass outbreaks of various infectious diseases arose suddenly and brought death and torment. And it wasn't just epidemics. Other diseases, which could have been caused by animal vectors or latent genetic factors, were capable of causing ailments for which no explanation could be found. And then people turned to the realm of the supernatural. Some of these diseases have contributed to one of the most enduring and widespread myths in the history of our civilization, the myth of vampires. The notion of vampirism arose a little before Bram Stoker's stories about Vlad the Impaler came out. But still, it was Stoker's work Dracula that became the standard for describing vampires. However, it is interesting that it was the famous Vlad the Impaler, Dracula, who hardly suffered from porphyria. At least none of the sources describing Dracula's appearance mentions any of the symptoms of this disease. The life of the historical prototype of Count Dracula, Vlad III Basarab, better known as Cepus, is shrouded in mystery. It is known that he was born in Wallachia, which was the first major state on the territory of Romania. As a sovereign ruler, Dracula fought the Ottoman Empire throughout his reign and did it quite successfully. He inspired horror, having become famous for bloodthirstiness and cruelty. The myth that Dracula drank human blood originated from the facts of his horrendous cruelty. He executed his enemies massively, ordering them to be impaled. His nickname, Cepus, that is literally impaler, originated here. The nickname Dracula was inherited from his father, whose name was Dracul, which meant dragon, because he was a knight of the Order of the Dragon, founded to protect Christianity from heretics and fight the Ottoman Empire. But let's go back to the present. Today I will tell you what porphyria is. It used to be called vampirism, but now the syndrome is known as acute porphyria. According to Dr. David Dolphin, a well-known specialist in porphyria and other liver diseases, people who were thought to be vampires or werewolves could suffer from this rare disease. Dr. Dolphin suggests that blood-sucking vampires were also victims of porphyria and sought to relieve the symptoms of their terrible disease. If you drink a lot of blood, then someone else's hemoglobin will bring the missing due to impaired biosynthesis red blood cells and alleviate the symptoms of the disease. Although the effect of hemoglobin entering the blood through the walls of the stomach is extremely small. Today, patients with porphyria are often treated with hemoglobin injections. In the Middle Ages, injections were not possible, so consuming large amounts of blood was the only way a person could get extra hemoglobin. Patients with porphyria desperately wanted to get blood, because due to a lack of hemoglobin, death occurred. Not surprisingly, pathological personality changes and dementia are common among such patients. Researchers believe that porphyria is at the heart of stories and legends about a mythical man who hides from sunlight and lives in darkness all his life. Of course, now that scientific knowledge about this syndrome is available to us, we cannot be afraid of people with it, but on the contrary, take care of them and love them. Where did this concept originate? It seems to be in folklore, and also the external image of these creatures in culture actually corresponds to the symptoms, which were interpreted somewhat differently. The first and most important aspect is a particular sensitivity to sunlight, which leads to facial disfigurement, blackening of the skin, and hair growth. Another main symbol is the fangs. The disease causes the gums to recede, which exposes teeth that look like fangs from the outside. Why do vampires drink blood? The urine of people with porphyria is dark red in color. In fact, some physicians used to recommend that their patients drink blood in order to compensate for the lack of iron in their bodies. However, they didn't mean human blood, but an animal. It is commonly known that it was much easier for the sick to leave the house at night, hence the myth arose that they were looking for victims and sucked their blood from their flesh with the help of fangs. The myth about vampires' garlic dislike arose not by chance. Porphyria sufferers can't really stand it because the sulfonic acid released by garlic exacerbates the damage caused by the disease in the body. The sulfur content in garlic can trigger porphyria attacks, which cause severe pain. Therefore, vampires have a sharp disgust for it. Also, according to mythology, these creatures are not reflected in mirrors. In reality, things are a little worse. The lack of oxygen and ultraviolet results in the destruction of tissues and facial structures. For obvious reasons, patients avoided their own reflection. Simply put, porphyrins are chemicals that are activated by bright light. In the case of their improper accumulation in the body, a serious illness occurs, which entails the destruction of pigment cells. This disease has been with us for thousands of years. In the Middle Ages, most people in Europe were uneducated and lacked even a minimal understanding of science. During the Spanish Inquisition, which lasted from 1478 to 1834, there was widespread persecution of people who were in any way different from the majority. The medieval church and the Holy Inquisition were at the head of the hunt for people who were declared witches, vampires, werewolves, and ghouls. Thousands of vampires were burned at the stake or hanged, and not killed by silver bullets or aspen stakes, as the legends say. All of them either turned out to be absolutely innocent or simply suffered from porphyria. At that time, people were dominated by religious prejudices, hence the cross appears in stories as the main weapon against evil spirits. Excessive hairiness can also be explained by porphyria. Healing of facial tissues is slow and causes strong hair growth. Symptoms also include neurological attacks. It can be trance, seizures, and hallucinations. These symptoms can also last for days or sometimes weeks. Fortunately, most patients have a latent form of the syndrome in which such signs do not appear. It is believed that marriages between close relatives often contributed to the spread of this disease. That is, it appeared as a result of incest, because if one of the parents is sick, In 25% of cases, the defective gene will pass to his or her child, and if such a gene is present in both parents, then there is practically no chance of avoiding a genetic disease in a child. To be continued in the next episode. Stay tuned.